The cash-strapped Pakistan has to return almost $22 billion over the next 12 months, a total of $80 billion in next 3.5 years, when its reserves are only at $3 billion and its economic growth a mere 2%. On average, during last 5 years, overall interest payments stood at around 4 to 5% of GDP each year, eating up more than 1/3 of Pakistan's total revenue. Currently, Pakistan spends $6 billion on debt servicing annually. Pakistan has taken 21 loans from the IMF, out of which 12 were bailouts. Now, Pakistan is seeking what would be its 30th IMF bailout since the late 1980s. IMF bails out a country only when it has no other recourse left, and when it dries out its foreign exchange reserves. On the other hand, its rival neighbor, India, bit the bailout bullet from the IMF only once in 1991. And then embarked on a never-ending success story. The bailout packages from Middle Eastern countries and China were not sufficient to stabilize the Pakistani economy and stop its mounting financial crisis. Pakistan's external debt and liabilities are almost $130 billion, representing 95% of Pakistani GDP. Only Pervez Musharraf's government enjoyed remarkable foreign currency inflow in the form of civil and military aid, for the most part in its 9 years due to Afghan war. But it did also receive 2 IMF loans in the first 2 years. But with Trump coming into presidency and increasing pressure from India, the foreign aid from America to Pakistan has been stopped since 2018. The Pakistani rupee is Asia's worst performing currency after losing 65% of its value since last year. Pakistan's foreign reserves can only cover the necessary import to keep the country functioning for 3 weeks only. A major reason for Pakistan's ever-increasing financial trouble is the funding from China. China funds infrastructure projects in Pakistan that are useful for itself, not for Pakistanis, and that too by bringing its own labor and providing loans at a much higher rate and way shorter loan tenures. The funding from China is likely to pull Pakistan into a debt trap. China is lending in US dollars, for which Pakistan needs a large trade surplus. Still, Pakistan has not been able to export enough. If Pakistan cannot and will not repay China, then they'll be forced to hand over their key national assets, like in the case of Sri Lanka handing over Hambantota port and Kenya losing Mombasa port to China. Huge debts are a result of historically damaging policies, pressure on fiscal imbalances, and notably the balance of payment crisis. To cope with it, Pakistan continued to develop a dependency on aid and loan, including 22 International Monetary Fund programs. The exponential debt accumulation, spending on defense, infrastructure projects, and servicing interest payments pushed successive governments to rely on budget deficits, further exacerbating the already crisis situation. According to UNDP calculations, Pakistan's lavish spending habits are at 6% of GDP, or $17 billion on elite privileges in the form of cheap input prices, tax breaks, or preferential access to land and services to feudal landlords, the corporate sector, powerful military members, and political class. Pakistan is also misspending between 8 to 12% of its GDP every year on loss-making state-owned enterprises, according to the World Bank report. Each year, Pakistan faces a trade deficit of around 40%. Its exports are stagnant while import increases exponentially.